Hi cheers! I am teacher Chris. Today's lesson will be about Independence Day. No, I am not talking about that movie and not about July 4th either, although it has something to do with it. Let's get started. We will be talking about Philippine independence. Here are 8 things about Philippine independence that you probably did not know. At number 1, Filipinos around the world celebrate June 12 as our Independence Day, Day of Freedom, or in Filipino dialect, Araw ng Kasarinlan, also known as Araw ng Kalayaan. On Day of Independence, it was on June 12, 1898, when then President of the Revolutionary Government, Emilio Aguinaldo, proclaimed Philippine independence from Spain. This declaration of independence of the First Philippine Republic happened in the Aguinaldo Mansion in Tabac, Cavite, and it has since been immortalized in our 5-peso bill. At number 2, but the First Philippine Republic did not last long from 1899 to 1903, and some say up to 1913. The Philippines fought a bitter and brutal war against the Americans. The United States initially offered aid in the revolution against Spain in support of an independent Philippines, but the United States would soon make a deal with Spain. Spain refusing to recognize being defeated by Filipinos decided to sell the islands to the Americans. The United States essentially replaced Spain as the colonial master, the Philippine Islands. Americans refused to recognize Filipino sovereignty and right to self-determination. The Philippine Declaration of Independence was ignored, and it was the beginning of what many in the world today call U.S. imperialism. At number 3, on November 15, 1935, the Commonwealth of the Philippines was inaugurated. It allowed for a certain degree of self-government while still being a colony of the United States. So basically, like Puerto Rico today, the citizenship. At number 4, American rule in the Philippines lasted until World War II, but on October 14, 1943, the Second Philippine Republic was born on paper. The Second Philippine Republic was supposed to fulfill the promises of an independent Philippines, free from Western imperialism. However, in reality, the Second Philippine Republic was heavily tied to Japanese imperialism. It was basically a puppet, not truly independent. And the Second Republic only lasted until August 17, 1945. At number 5, immediately after World War II, the United States finally granted the Philippines independence on July 4, 1946. Yes, the 4th of July. It was the birth of the Third Philippine Republic, an independent Philippines filled with the promises of democracy and prosperity. Yet, it was a freedom with strings attached. At number 6, in 1962, then Philippine President Diosdado Macapagal declared June 12 Philippine Independence Day, a special holiday throughout the Philippines. He did this in commemoration of our people's declaration of their inherent and inalienable right to freedom and independence, therefore publicly distancing himself and the country from the shadows of the United States. He was also quoted saying, "A nation is born into freedom on the day when such a people molded into a nation by a process of cultural evolution and sense of oneness born of common struggles and suffering, announces to the world that it asserts its natural right to liberty and is ready to defend it with blood, life, in honor." In other words, 4th of July, Philippine Independence Day should be celebrated and remembered on the day that we Filipino ourselves broke free from the shackles of imperialism and declared to the world our freedom, and not on the day that the colonizers had granted us independence, because in reality, genuine freedom has never been freely granted by the oppressors and colonizers. It has always been won through a revolution, through a collective struggle for our people's liberation. At number 7, although officially recognized as Philippine Independence Day, June 12, 1898, was not really the first time that our people, that our revolutionary wrote, asserted, and declared our right to freedom, our right to liberty against the cruelties and shackles of colonialism. Sometime in August of 1896, with the exact date still being debated, the Cry of Pugad Lawin, also known as the Cry of Balintawak, took place. It was the historic and official beginning of the Philippine Revolution and War for Independence. Similar to the Mexican Independence Day, also known as the Grito de Dolores, the Cry of Pugad Lawin was a historic declaration of a people's desires to fight and die for their independence. Members of the Katipunan led by Andres Bonifacio tore apart the community tax certificates, also known as Cédulas Personales, in protest of Spanish conquest, and rule. This little act of tearing apart settlers was a symbolic act of breaking free, and many have said that this historic cry should actually be celebrated as Philippine Independence Day, similar to many other nations and revolutionary traditions such as Mexico's Grito de Dolores and Brazil's Cry of Ipiranga. And lastly, at number 8, the world recognized the Philippines as an independent nation, state with its sovereignty resting upon the Filipino people, its diverse people. However, Many experts, activists, scholars, and critics alike would argue that the Philippines is a truly independent. Now, whether you agree or not, in reality, the relationship between the Philippines and the United States has always been criticized by many as a form of neo-colonialism and new form of imperialism, in which the Philippines continues to be subservient the whims of bigger powers. So as we celebrate Independence Day, whether in the Philippines or in the United States or anywhere else in the world, may we celebrate it by taking actions that's celebrated by serving our communities. Because if you think about it, what's the point of celebrating Independence Day when millions of our people are so struggling to survive, when many of our people are being deprived of their freedoms and their basic human rights? So let us celebrate Independence Day by taking actions, by serving our communities for the greater good, for the freedom, for the liberation, and for a brighter future children. And that is it for me today. If you like this video and learn things, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the bell. Once again, I'm Teacher Chris saying learning English is fun. I'll see you in the next video.